So in this video, I'm gonna go over some of the top things that AC companies do not want you knowing how to do or that you're even allowed to do them. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's go. So one of the top items that you as a homeowner can do without a question and is gonna save a ton of money, but also allow for your unit to run as efficiently as possible. And this needs to be done on a fairly regular basis, at least yearly. And that's by cleaning the AC unit. And I don't just mean a little rinse off. I mean, it needs to have a deep cleaning done, especially if you've gone for quite a bit of time without doing so. And it's really not that difficult to do. You just want to make sure that the power is off. You want to remove the top out of the AC unit, and then you're going to want to use some sort of a cleaner. Now there's a lot of debate as to which ones are best. You also need to be careful about what kind of coils you have. If you have micro channel coils, you would not want to use a lot of the coil cleaners that are out there. However, most people do not have that. But these coil cleaners are fairly inexpensive and they're also incredibly easy to use. And all you really have to do is spray those coils down all the way around the unit. And for my particular unit, I do the inside and the outside. Then after that coil cleaner has been put on, it just needs to sit for a little while, and then you give it a heavy rinse off. Now the coil cleaner that I like to use is made by a company called Webb. It is extremely effective, and the company themselves have said that it will do no damage to any of the metals that would be on an AC unit. So you don't have to worry about the corrosive properties of a lot of those cleaners. Then after all that's done, you can clearly see with your eye that it is way cleaner, and your AC unit is going to run more efficiently. It's going to run a lot quieter, and since it's running more efficiently and the way it's supposed to run, it's going to extend the life of your AC unit. Now I've seen quotes by AC companies that range anywhere from $150 all the way up to, one person in the comments let us know that their AC company quoted them $500 in order to clean their AC unit, where this only cost me about 10 to 20 bucks depending on what I use, and about a half an hour of my time. The next repair that AC companies don't want you to know how to fix or know what the problem is to begin with has to do with this condensate line right here. Now, if you've ever gone to your thermostat and you've seen where it's just showing blank, it's not showing any numbers. Some thermostats will do that, whereas some will still show the numbers, but when you go to turn the AC on, nothing kicks on. One of the main reasons for that is these condensation lines can become plugged. And when these become plugged, they don't allow, obviously, water to flow through them. The drain pan that is in your air handler will then start to fill up, and your air handler is equipped with a safety switch on it to where if that drain pan fills up too high, it will flip a switch that a lot of times then will cut power going to your thermostat, which is why you don't see anything on it, or it's just going to disable the system so that the AC unit can't run anymore and further cause water to build up in the pan. What I like to do is I actually like to use a shop vac, and a lot of AC companies, this is how they do it as well. So they'll get a shop vac and they have an attachment where they can attach it to the end of the condensation line to make a good seal. Obviously, as a homeowner, we're typically not going to have that, so I like to just use some shop towels to fill the gap, and it will provide enough suction in order to help pull whatever clog is in this line and pull it out. And I find doing it this way does an incredibly good job of doing that. Typically, your plugs are not going to be so big that they're not just going to be able to be pulled out, especially by something as powerful as a shop vac. And the other nice thing about the shop vac is it's going to continue trying to pull that plug all the way through the line, and it's also going to pull any of that dirty water with it and just suck it up. Now, one of the main ways those condensation lines get plugged up is due to people that are just not doing the standard maintenance that they need to be doing. And I'm talking as standard as changing out their air filters. You need to be changing these out about every 3 months, just to make sure that you're keeping it clean. Not only is it going to allow for your AC unit to run better, but it's also going to allow for this to do its job and catch all of that dust and stuff that can eventually get into your condensation line and start plugging it up. People that do not change these out on a regular basis are more likely to run into that issue where you're going to have a plugged condensation line. The air filter is not going to completely absolve this issue from possibly happening. Sometimes mold can build up and be the issue, but a lot of the times it has to do with things that the air filter is supposed to catch. Now for these next fixes, I actually need to get into my AC unit, but before I do that, I want to make sure that I turn the power off that is going to my AC unit, and I can do that by, on the side of the house, there should be some form of disconnect. My disconnect just pulls right out of the box, where you may have a circuit breaker or some sort of a fuse where you just need to turn it off. Then once that's off, all I need to do is remove these 4 screws, and then this metal panel will just slide down and then come right off. All right, so 2 of the main components in an AC unit, you've got this over here, where we've got these two hot wires coming in. This is what's feeding the AC unit. This is called the contactor. This silver cylinder over here, this is the capacitor. Now, typically these contactors are not the things that actually go bad. They can go bad, but in order to go over everything, this would probably be about a 40-minute video. So I'll just go over some of the more common issues that you may find with the contactor. All right, so I turn my power back on just to give you an idea of what can be looked for. So if I go and I take my probes and I put them on those two leads, you can see I've got around 240 volts, which is exactly what we want. If I put my probes on the two top terminals, you'll see we don't have any voltage there, and that's because currently the thermostat is not calling for any air to be put into the house. Once the thermostat calls for air to be put into the house, you've got some terminals here on the side. You see these wires over here on the side. These are coming from the thermostat that then are going to cause the internal contacts of this contactor to be pulled in and then make contact or bridge between the bottom and the top, which then will send the power onto the rest of the unit. And you can manually cause for the contacts to make contact, and it's just as easy as using a screwdriver. Now I want to make sure I'm holding the insulated end, and all I have to do is push that little button in, and it's going to kick on the fan and then eventually the compressor. So this contactor seems to be in good working order. Everything kicked on once I pushed in the contacts in order to make that connection between the two terminals. But if, for instance, if I was to push on this and push those contacts in and the AC unit would not have started up, then oftentimes it still is not the contactor that's necessarily the issue. A lot of times bugs can get inside or on these contactors, get underneath of those points, and then when those contacts get pulled down in order to make the connection between the two terminals, you don't have a good connection. The bug or whatever gets inside of there can actually serve as an insulator. Now this particular one will probably never have that issue with bugs getting in there because they have put these faces on them, but a lot of contactors are just open face to where it's very easy for a bug to crawl in there and cause that problem. However, if that's the problem, it's just as easy as cleaning off those points, and a lot of times this will go back to working. But let's say that our AC unit just is not even turning on. Well, the first place I would check would be my bottom terminals again. And as you can see, I have no voltage there. It's still reading 0. So oftentimes when this happens, it's something incredibly easy. A circuit breaker got turned off, the disconnect was pulled, but there's something that's interrupting the power from the house to this AC unit. So the problem is somewhere between this AC unit and the circuit breaker in the breaker panel. But let's say that we do have 240 volts down here. We've set our thermostat to a temperature that it's going to kick on the AC and call for air. But we come out here and it didn't pull down this plunger here to where it would make contact between the two terminals. Then we know that we probably have some sort of an issue with the contactor itself, or it could still be with the thermostat. But this is where then I would cut power to the AC unit again using that disconnect. Then I would remove the wires off of the sides of the contactor. And before doing that, if you don't know where they're supposed to go, it's always a good idea to snap a picture just to make sure you put the wires back where they're supposed to be. Then once I've got those wires removed, I'll take my multimeter and I want to move it over here to check the resistance. So on each side of the contactor where those wires were attached, you'll see these metal terminals. All I'm going to do is take one of my probes, put it to one side, take the other probe, put it on the other side. Clearly we have continuity there, and this is showing that I'm getting about 15 ohms. So this particular contactor appears to be in good shape. You're looking for anywhere between probably about 6 to 20 or 22 ohms. That's going to point to the contactor being in good condition. But if you're getting really low readings or you're getting really high readings, or in a lot of cases it'll show OL, which means open line like it's showing right now, then you very well may have a bad contactor and it needs to be replaced. Now these are just a couple of the things to look for on a contactor if you suspect it to be the issue. There are quite a few other tests that can be done and other scenarios that can happen, such as this getting stuck on and the thermostat not being able to turn it off. That again could point to a contactor issue, but we'd have to go a little bit further and do other testing in order to check that out, making sure that we've got 24 volts coming in from the thermostat for one. But these are some of the most common things that AC techs look for when you have an issue with the contactor. But now let's talk about what is probably the #1 repair or service call that is made, and that has to do with this run capacitor over here. Now, this capacitor itself is a brand new one. I just had to replace it, but this is probably one of the most common issues that somebody's going to come across with their AC unit. In my case, the fan would turn on, but the compressor would not come on and I wouldn't get any cold air. It could be the opposite of that, or you may see symptoms of where the AC unit just won't turn on at all. The good news is this one in particular ran me right around $10 or $11, so they're not a terribly expensive thing to replace as long as you know what you're doing. Now on capacitors, you have what are called microfarads, and these ratings down here are what they're talking about. So you should have 70 microfarads between the common terminal, which is this one, and the hermetic or herm terminal, which is this one over here. And you should have around 5 microfarads between the common terminal and then the fan terminal that is in here on the back. And then measuring those, the numbers can be within 6% plus or minus in order for them to still come out as normal. And of course, before I start working on this, I want to make sure that my power is off. And then after I've confirmed that the power is off, I want to make sure that my capacitor is completely discharged. Now this should happen naturally, but there is the very, very rare instance where a capacitor may hold on to a slight charge. The way to check that and discharge it is to take a screwdriver, make sure you're holding on to the insulated portion of the screwdriver, and then take the metal portion and connect it between 2 of the terminals. I like to go common to herm and then common to fan, and I just jump between those 2 a couple of times just to make sure that the capacitor is completely discharged. And then from there I can remove my wiring and start doing my testing to make sure that my levels are at the proper levels or within that plus or minus 6% allowance. Then after I check my levels and if everything checks out, I just reconnect all my wires. But if my numbers are outside of, and especially if they're far outside of the plus or minus 6%, then that's when I'm going to need to replace this run capacitor. And it's really not too difficult to do. It's literally a couple of screws and then replacing all of the wires where they are supposed to go. And then once all my wires are hooked back up to the new capacitor, then everything should be good to go. But because this video goes over so many different things, this is a very simplified version as far as how to diagnose this and also how to then replace it. So if you'd like to learn more about this issue and some of the positive outcomes that come from replacing this, then I'll post a link to that video right over here that you can click on that will take you directly to it. If not, or if you've already seen it, I'll post a link to a video right down here that goes over how I deep clean my unit like the pros do. So I hope that you found this video to be helpful. If you did, if you could do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button right down below. And of course, if you have any questions or comments still, you can leave those down in the comment section. And I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.